Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is a post edit that I'm just kind of throwing in there. So I got a really cool comment that you can see right here about how I should approach this whole cage thing. And obviously, you are kind of right. Like, so if you like cage and you think it works for you, by all means do it and you think it's okay. This video is just a different method that I feel like a lot of beginners and intermediates should use because it's a little bit easier to digest and it helps you get across the fretboard more. So both can work. Ideally, I would say to start with this one, and then once you get it, the whole caged system can actually make more sense because you can just start breaking it down going horizontally. You'll see what I mean. So yeah, hope this helps. The cage system absolutely sucks. I'm going to show you a much better method of getting the entire fretboard down with a very minimal amount of scales, a very minimal amount of music theory knowledge, okay? And it's going to make you sound freaking awesome in your soloing, improvising, songwriting, etc., etc., okay? Let's get into it. Let me flash back here for a quick second because it's really important that you understand why people use Cage, and it'll lead me into telling you why it's not a great idea for a lot of guitar players. So when I grew up playing guitar, one of the first things that I learned were the names of the strings, the open chords, maybe some bar chords, power chords. Then I'd start learning songs, right? And as I learned songs, I picked up a scale called the minor pentatonic scale, right? All of us have picked up on that in our beginner stages of guitar. So when that was set up, I was then introduced to the 5 pentatonic shapes, okay? And these 5 pentatonic shapes, if you type in on Google cage system for guitar, you'll see the cage system for the chords, and then you'll see the cage system for the pentatonic shapes, okay? And to most of us, when we look that up, it's very ridiculous because all we see are tons of dots all across the fretboard, and it's all this crazy stuff. It's a lot of information to take in that is really not going to set you up for memorizing the notes on the fretboard or for sounding really professional and getting everything across, okay? Because, listen, I'm talking to all the intermediate guitar players out there, okay? You've all already learned the basics. You know how to play some songs, you know your chords, etc. You know the basics of alternate picking, okay? And you maybe have a little bit of theory knowledge. If you're stuck at this intermediate spot, okay, and you look up, oh, how to get the whole fretboard down so that way I don't get stuck in a box, the first thing that always comes up is Cage, and Cage sucks. Okay, I'm gonna tell you all about why Cage sucks first here in a minute, but I'm just saying that all of us have gone through that. We type in the Cage system, maybe you understand it, okay? Basically, all Cages is you use all of the open chords like C, A, G, E, and D, and you can basically move them up in terms of bar chords, and they create those shapes, okay? Because you can play a C chord like this, right? That's the C shape, and then you basically play the A shape here. Then you can play the G shape either here. Some people do it like that, the E shape here, and then the D shape right there, okay? That's what Cage is, and you can do that for all the chords except it just starts on a different one of those C, A, G, E, D letters. That's all Caged is. You then add a couple of extra notes with the pentatonic scale because a pentatonic scale is 5 notes. That's why it's called pentatonic. Okay, the problem though is when you're given all these diagrams, it is so ridiculously hard to memorize, especially for beginner and intermediate players. For my advanced players out there, you can do it if you want to, but even if you're at that level, I don't recommend that you use it. And here's why. So Cage sets you up to still stay in a box, okay? Cage still sets you up to play in a box because when you look at these shapes, it's box here, box here, box here, box here, box here, and it will take you tons and tons and tons of hours of practicing of how to get from one spotting cage to the next spotting cage to the next spotting cage to the next spotting cage, okay? And on top of that, you're not even going to get the fretboard notes down very quickly. You might, but it's going to take you a lot of time because as humans, memorization of something this crazy takes a lot of time. And when you're talking about Cage, yeah, you can start to memorize, oh, this is where C is, right? Oh, this is where C is too. This is where C is too. You're talking so weirdly linear on there in a very inefficient way, okay? To a point where most of the people that I know who use CAGED to solo and to shred do not understand harmony. They do not understand how the fretboard actually works, and they don't sound practical when they play. In fact, most of them do this thing where, oh, it's time for me to improvise. I'm gonna start off playing this shape right here. Then I'm gonna go here after a while, and then I'm gonna go maybe right there. Then I can go here, right? And then they're gonna keep moving through those cage systems like that. When that is not going to create any diversity in your playing. You're going to sound very stiff, you're going to sound very stale, and you're still going to be trapped in a box. That's the problem with cage. And most intermediate players, like you listening, you probably are stuck in the box, okay? And there's one thing that is going to help you start to understand of how to get out of the box and how to be very minimal. Okay? That's called octaves. Okay? And I know you guys probably know what an octave is, but you'll understand how I mean by moving it in terms of scales and getting all the way across the fretboard. I'll show you that in a minute, okay? Because the octave at a glance is very easy, right? Up 12 frets is an octave. So when you play the minor pentatonic on fret 5, you can go up 12 frets and play it right there, right? And that's great, okay? That's technically an octave jump. Technically, you've moved further than cage, right? So, what you need to understand about the guitar is the guitar and the fretboard. This is what most people don't tell you. The guitar is an extremely, extremely symmetrical instrument. I'm going to repeat that. The guitar is a very symmetrical instrument. It makes sense in terms of your theory. It makes sense mathematically. Everything has been carefully created to make you be able to shred. Just most people don't know how to teach it, and most people use the wrong methods, okay? If you disagree with me, that's totally fine. You can use the cage if you want to, but I'm just saying a lot of us don't like using cage. It's too much information to memorize when we just want to play, okay? So, we're talking about these octaves, and I mentioned going up 12 frets, okay? And I was talking about how the fretboard is symmetrical, right? What does that mean? Well, that means that certain shapes that you play, like I did with here and then up 12 frets, are the same shape. That is going to play a very important part, but you also need to understand a little bit of music theory to get this stuff down. And I know a lot of people try to dodge music theory and they try to avoid it, or they learn it the wrong way, right? Guitar music theory, people either overcomplicate it or they miss the point of music theory entirely, and it just sets everybody up for failure, especially when you get into like one of those courses where they're like, okay, we're going to do some basic music theory, and then they just teach you CAGED, so they teach you the 7 modes of the major scale, and it's like you need to actually understand how diatonic, harmony, and functionality works with how notes interact with each other, okay? That's where classical and jazz musicians have up compared to us, okay? So I'll talk about that more in a minute, about harmony and stuff, but let's do just a tiny bit of music theory. I promise it will be very easy. So, a scale, let me get a water for a second. A scale has 7 notes typically. In music, there's only 12 notes to worry about. Excuse me. There's only 12 notes to worry about in music. A scale narrows it down to 7 with using the whole half step method, okay? Meaning we do 2 whole steps, and then a half step, then 3 whole steps, and then a half step, okay? That's how that works. The minor scale is basically 1 whole step, then a half step, then 2 whole steps, a half step, and then a whole step, okay? You don't even need to memorize that right now, though. We're not even going to use those scales, though. I'm just giving you that as an example. The pentatonic scale only has 5 notes. But when did they ever teach you how to move it across the fretboard? Okay? That's the biggest problem, because growing up, we never got taught that. Very rarely would we get taught something like that, okay? Now, There are a few people who did teach this. Okay, I'm not breaking through like this is my method or anything like that, but I'm just saying that this is what's accelerated myself, and this is what's accelerated all of my students to getting the whole fretboard down. Okay, so I'm just saying that I can relate. When I was a kid, it sucks because it's like, oh, let me do an improv session, and what do? You end up doing right, and then maybe you do right. You do major pentatonic, then maybe you go up 12 frets, and that's it. You're missing so much of the fretboard. Okay, let's get into how to actually do this. You've got your 5 notes in the pentatonic scale. Fret number 5, A minor. Let's do it real quick. That's your 5th note right there. When you start this, I'm talking to everybody at any skill level. If you don't know how to do this, count each note when you start. Okay? I'm not going to give you any tabs in this video because tabs ruin you when it comes to understanding this stuff. Don't look at any tab. Understand it about how your fingers move, because then you'll understand how symmetrical the guitar actually is on the fretboard. So, if we continue this a little bit, we have our first 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then from there, usually our ring finger is what hits the 7th fret, right? That's our octave. Remember, down 2 over 2, that's an octave if you didn't know that, okay? Keep that in mind. It's gonna be important in the future, okay? So that, by technically speaking, this means that if we replace that with our index finger, this is our 1. That's our first note. After you hit your 5, you reset. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What did I just do there? I just took the same shape that I did here, and I just played it up the octave in the same spot. Let's look more closely. Index pinky, index middle, index ring, index. Index pinky, index ring, index. Slide up 2 frets to the octave. Index pinky, index ring, index. The B string, move it up a fret. Okay, that's it. All you got to do. The B string, you have to move it up a fret because it's a 3rd away instead of a 4th away in the string dividing with the open strings. Okay, so if that's the case, check this out. And look at that. I just repeated the same thing for a 2nd time, and now, or a 3rd time, and now I'm all the way up here. And now I've done a full circle across the entire fretboard. One more time. We've got 5 to 8, 5, 7, and then 5. You should look at it as it's 3 frets apart, 2 frets apart, and then just directly down. Do the same thing. Index, pinky, index, ring, index. Slide up to the first note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Obviously, we're all out of strings, so you got to start moving this way. Big deal, though. It's not that hard. Okay, go to the 15th fret. You're at the note G, and then you're right up there. Now, here you have a lot of different choices. If you only knew pentatonic scale, this is the problem with beginners. If you only knew one scale, pentatonic, most people think that they're going to sound like this. You could go this way, too, and you go up 12 frets. That's not even cracking the surface of everything. So that's 3 ways of playing one scale. So imagine if you knew all 5 pentatonic shapes with this method. Okay, so that's 5 times 3. That's 15 different ways of getting the whole fretboard down in just one key with just pentatonic. Imagine if you knew all the diatonic modes. Imagine if you knew harmonic minor, blues, melodic minor. The possibilities are endless. So that's what we're going to go into a little bit later, but I don't want to overwhelm just yet. We're on a roll here. So I'm very enthusiastic about this because I just hate it when I hear people using CAGED. It does not make people sound melodic, in my opinion. And I'm just stating my opinion. You could disagree with me. So when we're at that level and we understand how to go this way and then come back up, okay, because that's always something good to make sure that you can practice, right? So now you can do this full circle with 3 different ways of playing one scale because we counted how many notes are in the scale, then we reset, moved our index finger instead of just doing the same old shape. Okay, so let's give another example here and see how we do with it. if we were in the key of B minor, so up 2 frets, and we did the same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, slide up to the octave and do the same thing, B string up an extra fret, this is the one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now we're up here. Easy enough. Do not fall for this one thing I see my students do. I'm going to include this in the video because I feel like somebody's going to do it. If you do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is not your octave. That's your fifth. And then people start doing this. And now you've ruined it because you restarted the position in the wrong spot. You restart on the last note of the scale instead of the first note in the scale. So do not do that. Make sure, that's why I'm always saying to count. Okay? So, if we're starting to understand how this thing plays into part of getting the whole fretboard down, we can now think of other possibilities in this sense. Let's start talking a little bit about the major pentatonic scale. Okay, so I'm all about relative keys with my students. Why am I all about relative keys? Well, relative keys is a better way to think of it rather than just thinking of it like position 1 versus position 2, because you're understanding music theory a lot better than other guitar players are. Okay, relative key means that the key has the same key signature. That's what you need to understand, is that A minor and C major, they have the same notes in the scale, but they're not the same key. That's what a lot of guitarists mess up too. Okay, because when I grew up and I was learning all these things, I didn't know any of this stuff about relative keys and stuff. I just thought that this was a position and then this was another position. Think of it like relative keys. You're gonna understand diatonic chord function and harmony so much more, and you're gonna get the circle of fifths down so much faster. Boom. Let's keep going. Pentatonic major. Easy enough, right? So we're gonna play this. First 5 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now remember, our pinky usually goes to the 10. You're gonna not do that. You're gonna go to your middle finger here and you're gonna reset the position. So we have middle pinky, we have index pinky, and then we have index. Then you're gonna go slide up to the 10, not the 9, because remember, we start on the 10, we start on the 8, the octave is 10. So you're starting here, 1, 2, middle pinky, index pinky, middle. Sliding up to the octave. When you're doing D to B string octave, it's 3 frets away. And there you go. Now, if you only knew how to do that with just both those pentatonic shapes, you can go from here right? Right? So that's the whole point of this, is I'm getting from one spot to the other really, really easily. You got to play around with this though and get used to these shapes, okay? You got to go this way and you got to come back up. You have to get used to these octaves. Oh my gosh, I'm going to say this 100 times. If you don't get used to these octaves, you're going to be stuck in the box. And you can do this for any scale, okay? So let's take the major scale, for example, okay? Let's take the standard shape that a lot of guitar players do. They do, let's say, A major. They do that shape. They do 2 notes on the first string on the low E. They do 5 to 7, middle to pinky, and then they do 4, 5, 7 on index, middle, and pinky, and then they do the index, and then you ring, and then you just right, and then you just keep on. You just keep on moving forward, and now I'm all the way up. Let's take the minor scale, for example. If I were to go on fret 3 for G minor, I could just do 3, 5, 6, index, ring, pinky, 3, 5, 6 on the A, and then index on the D. I repeat it right here. Okay? And that's it. That's how you do the octaves on the guitar. And this is why this always will triumph CAGED, because one, it's easy. A monkey can do this, okay? With enough practice, this can be your bread and butter, okay? If you're understanding this, it's going to be very easy for you to adapt in other keys, okay? So do not just play this in A minor or C major. Move it to other keys. You could use my 12-month system where every month I pick a different key and I use the relative keys with it, okay? That's very, very underrated. I'll make a video on that another time, but it's easy. It's very easy to digest. You're going to memorize the notes way faster too, because think of it like this. If you used one key per month, by the end of the year, you're going to have every key down. You're going to know the octaves of everything, okay? And here's the other thing too, is a lot of people over-exaggerate how much you need to get all the notes down the fretboard. Don't get me wrong. I have all the notes down on the fretboard, but do I think about all the notes while I'm shredding? Like, oh, that's a C. Oh, that's a B. No, kind of, but not all the time. Especially when I'm really in the zone, okay? It's about getting used to the shapes and understanding how diatonic harmony and melody work with each other with the chords, okay? That'll be a video in the future, okay? So that's why CAGED sucks. I really hope that helped. Drop a comment if you have any questions. I'll see you in the next video.